Hello everyone and welcome to DC Central, and in today's video we are going to be breaking down and reviewing Arrow Season 7 Episode 21, the penultimate episode of the season, otherwise entitled Living Proof. If you have not seen this episode, make sure you go and do so before proceeding with this review, as it will be filled with spoilers. So you heard me right, this is the penultimate episode of the season. We've only got one more left now, and that'll be it. The season will be done. And, for a penultimate episode, I have to say, this felt a bit strange. This felt a bit odd. It didn't really feel like the build-up for the finale was necessarily there, and the build-up that was there wasn't exactly the most satisfying in my opinion, but we'll dive into that. Now, I'd say the biggest selling point for this episode was the return of Colin Donnell as Tommy Merlyn. We got to have Tommy in this episode. Obviously, at the end of episode 20, we saw Oliver trapped beneath all this rubble, thanks to the work of Emiko. And throughout this episode, he is hallucinating and seeing Tommy in his head. And Tommy is basically there to try and convince Oliver not to kill Emiko. He's trying to convince Oliver to break his family's cycle of violence. Obviously, Robert and Moira, he's trying to get them to, move away from that and trying to get him to see his own ways and things like that. And I have to say, anytime Tommy comes back to the show, it's always great. The scenes between him and Oliver are always awesome. The dialogue is great, and the dialogue was as strong in this episode as it always is with Oliver and Tommy. And it was just nice to have Colin Donnell back. I really hope that we get to see Colin come back a bit more for season 8, because obviously Colin Donnell has now left Chicago Med, so hopefully that means we'll get some more appearances of him in Arrow in season 8. But it was just great to have Tommy back, and I really enjoyed having him in this episode. Now, the rest of Team Arrow are out there looking for Oliver. They are trying to maneuver their way through this building to try and find him. Now, there were some interesting moments here. Like, Roy basically does another sacrificial moment where he goes to sacrifice himself, basically to save the team, because Roy basically feels like he is in complete debt to the team at all times. And I feel like, seeing Roy doing these things, it was noble and it was heroic, but I kind of feel like, are they just going to keep doing this with Roy now? Are they just going to keep making him, has he each got a death wish or something? Is that what's going on now? I mean, granted, I love Roy, but, I feel like with this moment, again, it was heroic, it was noble, but I just feel like they're kind of doing these things with Roy now, where it kind of feels like he's in permanent debt to the team, and he will do anything to stop them. But what really annoyed me about all this stuff, though, was Dinah. Now, Dinah has been a really bad character this season, really poorly written, really badly handled, and I feel like this episode sums it up perfectly, because she is literally 5 minutes before this scene happens, she is criticizing Roy, saying, we shouldn't have covered up for him, I'm going to lose my job, everything we've worked for this year is destroyed because of him. And then after Roy jumps into the pit of gas and everyone thinks he's potentially dead, Dinah starts crying, and even Roy calls her out on it, says, I thought, you didn't care about me, like, I didn't think it would make any odds to you if I died or not. And then Dinah basically has to have the thing where she's like, yeah, I don't really know you very well, but I won't want to see you dead, which, I mean, is a fair statement, but the fact that she was basically like, we should just abandon Roy, essentially, and then she was crying over him when she thought he potentially had died. It's just, again, it's these inconsistencies with Dinah which are just proving why she's a problematic character, and a character that the writers clearly don't know what to do with. And I feel bad for Juliana Harkavy, because she's really good in the role. I really like her as Dinah, and I really want to like Dinah as a character. I really did back in season 5 when she was first introduced, but in season 6 they completely ruined her, and in this season she's been so inconsistent and so flip-floppy that it's just really distracting, and this episode again just proves that once again. Now, the cops actually come to arrest Felicity in this after they find out that Roy killed those guards from the last episode, which was leaked thanks to Emiko. Now, the stuff with Felicity and Elena is basically just a setup for the next episode. Like, they eventually end up going back to the bunker, and then Emiko nearly kills Felicity, and then she doesn't, which is basically just a way to get Felicity to reveal to Elena that she's pregnant. This all basically leads into the flash forwards. This stuff was okay. It was just kind of stuff that needed to be there. I'm surprised that Elena has become like this big part of the show now, because she was such a sort of insignificant character in season 5 and 6, but now she's just kind of come back all of a sudden. I don't know how I feel about that, but we'll talk about that in the next bit. So the flash forwards, we have Elena actually in the flash forwards. We actually see Elena. Now, when I saw her show up, I couldn't believe it. Like, I don't know what they were going for with this look. I don't know what the point was. I mean, obviously, I know there's been a lot of criticism for Arrow about how they've designed the characters in the flash forwards, especially like Felicity, who basically looks no different. And then Dinah's wig is pretty bad, but like, I don't even know what this was. So Elena's now blonde, and she's got incredibly short hair. She kind of looks like Ellen DeGeneres, and it's one of those things where I just don't quite see what the point was or what they were going for. It was very, very interesting, but she's there, and basically she is the reason why Archer is in the hands of, you know, of the villains of the flash forwards. Like, she's basically responsible for Archer getting into the wrong hands, which was kind of, you know, set up in the last episode of the season. So, you know, it does kind of all line up. But what I did like about the flash forwards, though, is that we finally got like a little bit of development for William, because William has just been shoved aside this entire season in the flash forwards, which surprised me, because I was always under the impression that he was going to be the lead of these flash forwards. Like, he was going to be practically the main character of this stuff. You know, he was the first character we met in these flash forwards. I thought this was going to be a very William and Roy heavy thing, but William and Roy have really been underserved in this storyline. So it was nice to actually, you know, especially ever since the introduction of Mia came in, you know, like Mia basically just became, like Mia and Felicity just basically took over, which kind of annoyed me, because like I say, William and Roy are, in my opinion, a lot better characters. So, you know, it was nice to actually see William get some development with Felicity. You know, he's still angry about, you know, basically her and Oliver just abandoning him and leaving him, not being a part of his life and not ever telling him why. So I appreciate that, and you know, I really hope we get some more stuff like this and some more development for William in the season finale, also going into season 8. And if we do eventually get this, you know, future spin-off, they need to like actually give William like a more defined character, because I think he's a really good character, and I really like Ben Lewis in the role. They're just struggling to like actually give him screen time, because they're so focused on Mia and Felicity. And I feel like if they actually stick to their guns and stick to what they originally were going to do with this flash forward, which is, you know, like a buddy team up thing with William and Roy, they'll be able to actually make a bit more of an interesting story overall. So Emiko eventually does break into the SCPD with the Ninth Circle to steal the weapon that was stolen from them. So she now has this weapon that is obviously going to be a big threat to Star City, and that's basically our setup for the finale. Emiko gets away. Yeah, I mean, I'm still not particularly too happy with Emiko essentially becoming the villain of the season. You know, killing Dante and things like that. I'm not really a massive fan of where she's gone. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see what happens to her in the finale, if she's going to redeem herself and is going to come back and work with Team Arrow, if she's even going to be in Season 8, is she going to die at the end of the season? I really don't know what their plans are with Emiko. I think it's like, because I was predicting that she was going to, you know, flip back, but I don't really know if that's the case anymore. It's very, very interesting, but, you know, this finale setup, like I say, it didn't really feel like a finale setup. Given the fact that the season finale is next week, it doesn't really feel like it's been set up properly. So I don't know how the finale is going to begin, but it just feels very, very rushed to me, and this ending didn't exactly fit, I think, as the writers intended it to. Overall, though, not a terrible episode of Arrow, just not a particularly great one either, which is disappointing given the fact that this is, like I say, the penultimate episode of the season. This is the one that's supposed to get us all really hyped and excited for the finale. I have to say, though, based on the promo photos, I am really excited for next week's episode. Obviously, we've got Laurel coming back next week. Also, Bronze Tiger is coming back next week as well, which I'm very excited about. So, you know, we have got some cool stuff coming up for the finale, but for a finale setup episode, this did not do its job very, very well. Although it was really nice to have Tommy back and things like that, it wasn't enough to really save this episode from just kind of mediocrity, and it kind of came across as a episode that we could have really had in the middle of the season, and it would have made no difference. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode of DC Central. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button, also hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload from me. And also make sure you stay subscribed for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Arrow. And with all that said, guys, hope to see you again in my next video.